Okay, so after setting up our orthographic views, we are finally ready to start modeling. However, but first, there is a but first, there's two very, very important things I need to stress. And this goes with modeling anything. The first is reference. Using reference is very important, probably the most important thing when it comes to modeling. It doesn't matter if you're modeling a human, a raccoon, anything, a creature that doesn't exist. You must use reference. And what do I mean by reference? I mean anything that remotely resembles the type of character or creature you're modeling. You should go and find as many images off the internet or go out and take images yourself of that creature or character. So if you're modeling a deer, find as many images of a deer online as you can, or go to a zoo and take pictures of a deer yourself and use that when you're modeling. And I know that a lot of you might think that, well, we already did our concept art, we already did our reference, what more, or our orthographics, what more reference do you need? Well, the truth is, our concept art and our orthographic views don't give us the detail that we really need to get things looking right. We need to know, when we go in to model the eyes, we need to know what an actual eye looks like, a human eye. Because even though our character is an elf, it's based off of human features. So we need to see what a human eye looks like to really be able to model that accurately. We need to see what a mouth looks like and what a nose looks like to really be able to model that accurately. Now, and that, again, that even if you're modeling a creature that doesn't exist in the real world, chances are it resembles something that exists in the real world. You know, even a dragon resembles a lizard. You know, if you're modeling like a werewolf creature, you need to find images of humans and wolves together and use those to figure out how to model things. And usually what I do whenever I start modeling anything, and I'll usually do this before I even draw the concept art, I'll gather together a bunch of images of whatever it is I'm modeling, or anything remotely resembling or that has anything to do with what I'm modeling, and I'll make myself a collage. And I'll always have that collage open on my other monitor, so I can always just look at that at a glance, and it's always in the corner of my mind, and that feeds into the realism of my character. So I can't stress enough how important it is to familiarize yourself with anatomy and use reference images when you're modeling. Now, one very important thing, especially when you're modeling human beings or things that resemble human beings, some of the best reference you can find is attached to your body. So if I'm modeling a hand, I have a hand right in front of my face that I can move around in any position. So if you're modeling a hand, bring it up, bring your hand up and look at your own hand. A lot of times I keep a mirror on my desk. So if I need to model a nose, I can look at my own nose and I can sort of figure out the shapes of my nose and figure out how to model it by looking at my own nose. So that's one very, very important thing, probably the most important thing to keep in mind with modeling. And I can't stress enough how important it is to use reference as much as possible. Now, the next thing that I want to stress is good topology. Now, good topology, what does that mean? That means the actual edge flow or the way your polygons are laid out on your model. You can have an amazing looking model with bad topology, and it becomes pretty much useless when it comes to animation at that point. So you must have very, very good topology to have a very good animatable character. So usually a good thing to do is just to do a Google image search for good topology. And you'll find lots of examples of really good topology. Here's one of Nathan Drake from Uncharted, and you'll see that there are edge loops that goes around his mouth, around his lips, around his eyes. And the reason that is important is because he's going to be animated. His eyes are going to be blinking, his mouth is going to be moving. So that topology, those polygons, need to deform in a way so we don't see any artifacts, and they kind of mimic the way our muscles are laid out on our actual face. So usually what I'll do is just Google good topology, and any of these two images here are really good, and they're probably the ones I use for the most part as good examples. So we can see here that we have edge rings around the mouth, we have sort of a singled out nose, we have edge rings or edge loops that go from the top of the nose all the way around to the bottom of the mouth. Around the eyes, we have a sort of raccoon mask around the eyes. This is all very, very, very important for getting good animation and deformation when you're deforming and sort of forming facial features around on the face. Here's a pretty good example of what I'm talking about. Like, because the topology is laid out in a very, very good way, we can get all these interesting facial features and all of our topology, all of our polygons to form in a way that's sort of conducive to animating. And we don't get any artifacts. Everything bends the way it should bend, and so on. So it's very important to familiarize yourself with what good topology should look like. And I would probably use, this is probably the best example that I could find. So I would definitely recommend using this image. And again, I found it just by going to Google and doing an image search for good topology. Okay. So once you have familiarized yourself with good topology and you sort of know the anatomy, you've familiarized yourself with anatomy, you've made yourself a reference collage, you've gotten lots of reference images, and you have that up, you're constantly looking at that, then you're actually ready to start modeling. There are a few tools that I use whenever I model that are important, and I'll go over those. Usually what I'll do is make myself a tool shelf. I have one here just called modeling, and I'll add tools to my modeling shelf as I need them. So just to show you how I go about that, I'm going to create a new one. So we create a new modeling shelf, or a new shelf at all, by going over here to all the way to the left, and you'll see like a little square and a little triangle there. So I'm going to click on that triangle, and I'm going to say, I'm going to go to new shelf, and it's going to ask for a name. So I'll just name this modeling 2. So now we have a new modeling shelf that has no tools in it. Now to add tools to your modeling shelf, what you're going to do is hold down Control and Shift and click on them. So first of all, probably one of the things I do or I use more than anything is the Insert Edge Loop tool. So I'm going to go to Mesh Tools, Insert Edge Loop tool, and I'm going to hold down my Control key and my Shift key and click on that. And that won't actually activate the tool. It'll add it to my tool shelf. So just like that. I also use the Bridge tool, so I can add that. I use the Create Polygon tool sometimes. I use the Append to Polygon tool as a very good one. Sculpt Geometry is something I use. Merge vertex tool. So I'll go ahead and add all of these tools that I use often to model. And I can always rearrange these tools by middle clicking and dragging. So if I want my bridge tool to be at the end here, I can middle click it and just drag that to the end, and I'll sort of rearrange my tools there. Another thing I use, and this is because most of my models begin with just a simple polygon plane. I'm going to go to Create Polygon Primitives, Plane Options, and I'm going to change my width divisions and height divisions down to 1 and hit Apply. And that's going to create a plane that I can just go ahead and delete. And I'm going to go to Create Polygon Primitives, Plane. I'm going to hold down Control and Shift and click that. So now what that does is add that to my tool shelf with the settings that I gave it. So anytime I click that, it's just going to create a quick polygon plane right there. So I can go ahead and delete that for now. The other tool I use quite a bit is the split polygon tool. Now the split polygon tool is no longer in any of the menus of Maya. If we go to Mesh Tools, you're going to see that you no longer have a split polygon tool. You do have a cut faces tool that may work the way you want it to. In fact, let's just see how that works. So I'm going to do Create, because I may not need the split polygon tool if this works the way I think it will. So let's just create a sphere. And let's go to Mesh Tools, Cut Faces. So yeah, that's definitely not what I want. Let's see if there's anything else. Multi-cut tool, I believe, is what we want. Yeah. So I used to use the split polygon tool, and then they created this other tool in the Maya 2013, I believe, or 2014. They didn't really like as much, so I still like to go in and use the split polygon tool. But this this multi-cut tool works pretty well, so I'm going to use that instead. So I'm going to go to Mesh Tools, hold down Control Shift, and click my multi-cut tool. All right, so I can delete that sphere. It's just for testing out that little thing. And let's see, the other thing I use quite a bit when I start modeling is the extrude tool. Basically, the modeling method that I'm showing you here is the edge extrusion method. So that's one way, or that's how we're going to sort of model our character, is with going back and forth between box modeling, which I'll explain also, and edge extrusion. But we're going to start with edge extrusion. So I need my extrude tool as well. So I'll go to Edit Mesh, hold down Control Shift, and click Extrude. So that's pretty much all the tools that I'll need to begin with. And really, I'm not going to need many more than like the Create Polygon tool, multi-cut tool, edge loop tool is very important, append to polygon, sculpt geometry tool I'll use a lot later. The extrude tool is very important. The other thing I want to do quite a bit is freeze my transformations. There's three things actually. I want to freeze my transformations quite a bit, and that's because I just need to like clear out my transform. So if I have an object like a sphere, as I begin to move it around and rotate it, a lot of values will end up in my channels here. or my transforms here, and I want to freeze those to kind of clear out all those numbers. So basically what that does when I go to modify freeze transformation is it zeroes everything out. So that's something I want to do quite a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to my shelf. So I'll go to modify, hold down Control Shift and click freeze transformations. The other thing I want to use quite a bit is center pivot. So sometimes I will be modeling and the pivot point for that model will get moved. So I definitely want to use center pivot. So I'll hold down Control Shift and add that. I want to delete my history quite often. So I'll go to Edit, Delete by Type, History, hold down Control Shift. And that's something else I'll want. And also I like to harden and soften my normals quite a bit. So I'll go to normals, soften edge, add that, and harden edge and add that. So once I have all those there, I have pretty much everything I'm going to need to model this guy. I may add things as I move along, but I'll definitely explain what I'm going to be adding if I add anything that I use often. Okay, so after that whole spiel, definitely remember to familiarize yourself with anatomy, get your reference images. I can't stress that enough. It doesn't matter. I don't care how well you know your subject. You need to look at references. You can't possibly remember every little detail that's in a nose. So it's very important to look at noses, look at things you're modeling, and just constantly have those around as you're modeling. Familiarize yourself with good topology. That's very important if you're going to be animating. If it's going to be a static object that never moves, it's not so important. But if it's a character that morphs or deforms at all, like a human that has a face or any sort of creature, good topology is of the utmost importance. And you can find, if you just Google good topology again, you can find tons and tons of things on what exactly good topology is, why you should use good topology. So I definitely encourage you to go out and do that research and find all the information possible on good topology. And then we just added the tools that we need to add to start modeling. So what I'm going to start with here is the eyes. And the reason I like starting with the eyes, let's jump over to our front view, is because it gives us something to start with that's fairly easy to create and accurate. We all know that eyeballs are round, or almost round. They're kind of oval shaped, but for the most part they're round, and we can start with a round object to create our eyes. Okay, so I'll start just by creating a sphere. I'll go to Create, Polygon Primitives, Sphere. And again, we're on a centimeter grid, so our sphere is going to be very small down here at the bottom. So we need to sort of move that in place. So I want to make this sphere the size of an eyeball. So some of the common sort of things done wrong with this creating a sphere that's the size of an eyeball. And it's mainly just because of people not quite listening or paying attention, or just misunderstanding what an eyeball is, or lack of knowledge of how big an eyeball actually is. And believe it or not, it is something that happens quite often. So I just want to point out that sometimes people will want to make it this big. That is an incorrect size. That is just the size of the iris and the pupil. So that's not the size of the eyeball. People also want to make it just the size of the white of the eye, the visible surface of the eye. And that's actually, we see the visual surface, visible surface that we see in an eye is actually a very small amount of the actual eyeball. The eyeball is actually very, very large compared to the visible amount of eye we see. Especially in a character like this where the features are exaggerated, the eyes are going to be fairly large. So I'm going to scale this guy up quite a bit. And chances are this guy's eyeballs are going to be about this size. So the other thing I want to do is rotate it. So I'll jump over to my rotate X is what I want to rotate, and I'll rotate that 90 degrees. So now we have sort of a representation of a pupil here that we can sort of line up that eyeball with. You may get it a little too big. You can always change it later. It may create some extra work for the eye, but that's all right. So kind of line that up the best you can in the front view, and then I'm going to jump over to the side view and line that up in the side view as well. Now you're going to eventually have to pick a side of view that you want to stick more to, because for the most part we just drew these things to, they're not exactly accurate and they don't match up exactly. So at some point when you're modeling, you're going to realize that you're going to have to pick a side to kind of stick to more often. So for me, that's usually the front view, and I just use the side view as a guideline. I don't stick to it as much as I do the front view. But for the most part, just lining up the eyeball there like so. And let's jump over to the perspective view. And there's our eyeball way up there. Now if you hit your F key, you're going to basically frame whatever you have selected in your view. So I just hit my F key to frame what I have there. And what I want to do is use my edge loop tool to make a little bit of a representation of the pupil of the eye, or the iris of the eye, excuse me. So I'm going to go to my 4-panel view where I have my my front view and my perspective view, and I'm going to go to my edge loop tool, insert edge loop tool, and I want to insert an edge loop right around here, right around the edges of that iris, just like so. And then what I can do is just double click that center loop there, which will select the whole edge loop, and then I can just move that in a little bit, and that will give us a little bit of a representation of an iris. Now if I want to, I can take it a little bit of a step further and go to my normals buttons there that I created, and I can harden that edge of the normal, and that will give us a little bit of a line. So that's a little bit of a representation of our eyeball. Now basically what we're going to be doing here is only modeling half of the character. And since our character for the most part is symmetrical, we only really have to model half. Just like when we did our concept art, we just drew half and kind of duplicated the other side over. So in order to get two eyes there, what I want to do is I want to freeze my transformations, just like that. I'm going to click on my insert key, or just touch my insert key, and that will change my my sort of move widget to move my pivot point, and I'm just going to move that to the center of my grid, and then I'll click my insert key again. You can also do that by holding down the D key. Just move the pivot point by holding down the D key and then releasing the D key. Okay, So to duplicate this eye over, what I want to do is duplicate an instance of the eye. So if I ever make a change to the eye, to one eye, it will happen to the other eye as well. So in order to do that, I'm going to go to Edit, Duplicate Special Options. And let me just go ahead and reset my settings so they are what you would see by default. I want to, under geometry type, I want to change this to instance. So it doesn't just create a copy, it creates sort of like a ghost of the original object. So anything I do to that original object will get done to the copy. And then I want to change the scale. So I want this eyeball to be in the exact same spot, but over here. So if we look at our little 3D grid widget down here that shows us our axes, we're wanting to move that on the X axes. So anytime you see three values, one right after the other like this, it's always X, Y, Z. So X is going to be the first value. So I want to mirror this. So I want to mirror it on the X axes. So instead of 1, I'll click -1. I want to leave these other guys at 1 because if I don't, then our object will have a 0 scale. So it'll basically be flat. And I don't want it to be flat. I want it to be the same exact size. So I want it to have a 1 scale, but I want it to be mirrored. So just -1x scale, set my geometry type to instance, and I will hit apply. And there we go. And the reason it's black is because we're currently in a one-sided lighting mode. So I'm going to go to lighting in my viewport and just switch on two-sided lighting. Now once we combine these together and actually finish the character, we may have to deal with some issues with the normals, because basically since we did a -1 scale, the normals on this eyeball is backwards. But that's an issue we can fix later. For now, we just kind of want to start modeling our character. Okay, so we have our eyeballs in place. We are ready to start modeling. So what I'm going to do is create a plane, just a regular old polygon plane, and we'll look at this in the front view and bring up our polygon plane. Hit F to frame that up. I want to rotate that 90 degrees on the X so it's sort of facing us like so. And then I'm going to start, I'm just going to place this really anywhere at the moment. So I'll switch to my vertex mode. Now I'm just going to move these verts to sort of line up with any part of the eyelid. And now I think it's important, this is an important time to stress keeping low number of polygons. A lot of people will just jump in and start making tons and tons of polygons as soon as they start extruding, but it's very important to keep a low number of polygons to start your model. It's easier to add in detail than take out detail. So you want to start out with as little detail as possible and slowly add in more detail. So once I had that sort of lined up with any area of my eyeball there, I'm going to select, go to my edge mode and select an edge. And I'm just going to extrude that edge. And I'm basically just hitting my G key to repeat my last action. I'll go all the way to the end and then one more, and then I'll select this edge and go down just a tad. And then when I'm done with that, I want to come into my vertex mode, and I just want to move everything around a little bit. To sort of get a good flow going. So I want everything to look a little bit like smooth curves, even though I know they're hard, sort of polygonal pieces. I want to try and get that looking as smooth as possible before I jump to my next step. For the most part, this modeling method is all about polygon tweaking. So it's something you just have to do. You have to spend the time moving polygons around. And in my opinion, no vertice should go untouched or unmoved. You should constantly be moving your vertices around. So once I have that, I have sort of the top eyelid there. I'm going to jump over to my perspective view. I'm going to move that into position because it started out at the origin. And I sort of just want to line that up with the eyeball. So at the moment, it's just a flat line. So what I want to do is come in and I want to center my pivot. Actually, I don't want to center my pivot at the moment. I want to keep it where it is. And I want to come in and select these vertices and just sort of move them back in Z to where they're kind of lining up with the shape of that eye. So remember, your eyelid sort of wraps around your eyeball, and that's pretty much what I'm trying to do here, is wrap that eyelid around the eyeball. Like so. So now it's matching that shape. Okay, so I have that first little eyelid piece created. So now I want to come in and create the bottom part. So I'll select this edge here, and I'll pretty much just do the same thing. I'm going to extrude along, and I kind of want to get the same amount of polygons on the bottom as the top. So I'm going to use the top as a guideline. Okay, so once I have those in place, I want to come in and again, I want to move every single vertice around. I don't want to leave any vertice untouched. Again, it's important to look at actual eyes. And I always have, you know, on my other monitor that you can't see, I have images of eyes up. So I'm constantly looking at reference. And so I know that what I'm doing is correct. Okay, so once I have that, I can merge these guys together. So I'm going to use my merge vertex tool. And I'm going to merge those together. So I have a whole ring going around the eye. So now, again, I need to jump over to my perspective view. I'm going to move these polygons up, and I'm going to line them up with the eye. So the eyelid's going to wrap around the eyeball. I'm just moving them back in Z space. I have them where I want in X and Y space. I just need to move them in Z space. All right, so then I can hit 3 and kind of see what that's starting to look like smoothed. And then I'll hit 1 to go back. So I have the eyelid shape taken care of. Now I need to do the sort of the outer eyeball. So what I'm going to do is just double click on that outer edge loop, And you really shouldn't have any more polygons than what I have. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So 15 or 16 should be, you should try to accomplish everything you can with that amount. You shouldn't have any more than that. You can always add more later once you get the forms right. It's very important to get the forms right first and then add in the tiny bits of detail. So really at this point you shouldn't have any more than say 16 or 17 polygons. So I'm just going to select that entire outer edge loop, and I'm going to hit my extrude button. Then I'm going to hit my scale button and scale everything out like that. I'm going to jump over to my front view. I'm going to move all of those vertices around to kind of get kind of be in the areas I want them to be. I want it to be kind of like a round outer eye shape. Again, I don't want to add too much detail, so I don't want to add any more geometry than what I have. What I have is good. What I have can accomplish what I want to accomplish. You just need to go in and move all of these vertices around like so from the front view, and then I want to go and do that same thing from the side view. But since I already have them in their X and Y positions, I'm only going to move them in Z at this point. So I only want to come in and move them around on the Z axes. Okay, now almost immediately the inside of your eye is going to start jetting out towards your nose. So I want to come in and go ahead and start bringing that up quite a bit, because it's going to start forming our nose there. Oops. There we go. Just switched views by accident. And again, I want to try and get a smooth transition here. I want everything to be a smooth transition. I don't want any sharp looking edges like that, where things go one direction and then jet back into another direction. I want everything to be a smooth, nice sort of curve. So I want to look at that in my perspective view, smoothed out, to see how that's starting to look. So now I can actually start adding an edge loop here. And even though it's, you know, for the most part, it's kind of where I want it to be, I still need to come in and sort of tweak all of those edges. And again, this what I'm looking at now is not my reference or my concept art. It's actual human eyes, so I can get an idea of what the actual human eye looks like. So this is where your eyelid is going to kind of crease in a little bit. Oops. Like so. Smooth that out to take a look at it. And for the most part, I'm having, I'm getting my result at this point is very similar to an actual eye. I probably need to bring in, I think I'm going to have to add the eyeballs themselves to a different layer at some point so I don't select them by accident like I've been doing. But I probably want to go ahead and bring these edges in quite a bit, and that means I need to sort of alter everything else. Anytime you move one sort of group of vertices, you need to kind of reevaluate everything and I'm just moving these around based on what an actual eye looks like. So not necessarily my reference that I'm using. Or my concept art, but what an actual eye looks like from my reference. And that's starting to look pretty good. All right, so then from the inside of the eye, I want to start forming the inside of the eye, which is pretty simple. I just want to grab that inner edge. I'll go to my extrude tool, then hit my move tool, and just move that inner edge in and maybe scale it in just a little bit. And then what I want to do is I want to get that sharp lip around the eyelid. So I'm just going to add an edge loop on the inside there. Just like that. So now when I smooth that, we have an inner sort of lip of the eyelid. All right, so the next thing I want to do is duplicate this over. So I want to create sort of the bridge of the nose and duplicate this over to the other side. So what we're looking for here is that sort of area right there, and that will give us that raccoon mask. What we have so far is this green area. What we want is that outer raccoon mask. Okay, so I'm going to do that with just this one edge loop here. So I'm just going to grab that edge. I'll jump over to my front view. I'm going to click my extrude button, bring that into the center like so. And I want that to match up my side. So I'm going to bring that out, move those verts around a little bit. I probably want to add an edge loop or a couple edge loops in here so I get like that flat bridge of the nose, so my nose isn't just a point. Like that. And then I'm going to, let's look at that smooth. It looks all right smooth. I'll probably need to change some things. Now my pivot point, luckily, is still in the center. So I don't need to move that around. If I did, I could either do that by holding down the D key or hitting my insert key and moving that. Now I just need to duplicate that over. So I'm going to, with that selected, I'm going to go to Edit, Duplicate Special. all the same settings that I set before should still be there in place, so I don't have to change anything there. I just need to duplicate special, and now I have that eye. Oops. And I can hit 3 to kind of see what those guys look like. And to me, it looks like a pretty good start. I could probably tweak some things a little bit, and you'll notice if I do come in and sort of tweak one little section of the eye, the other will be affected as well. So that's sort of the benefit of instancing your geometry rather than just copying it over. So for now, I think we have a pretty good start. Next, we will move on to creating the mouth and nose, and then we'll finish up with the rest of the head.